And welcome back to the Red and Gold Zone. I am joined by Kylan Mills and, of course, our Red and Gold Zone insider, Grant Cohn, for the Keys to the Game segment, my favorite part of the show. Grant, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's get right into last week's game. You know, despite a few turnovers, watching the game, the Niners, they looked like the effort was there. And honestly, in some facets of the game, it seems like they played pretty well, but they still came out on the losing side, and it just felt like the Bills were just a way better team than them, which, you know, is kind of a gut punch for this point of the season. You want to see your team matched up against some of the better teams in the league, and it seemed like one team was way better than the other. Is that what we can scratch this game off to?
Yes, one team was way better than the other. The Bills are excellent. The Bills might go to the Super Bowl. The Niners aren't that good. There's no shame in losing to the Bills. The Bills have beaten every single team in the NFC West. They made the Seahawks look just as inept as the Niners. No shame in it. It's just kind of unfortunate because now the Niners have to win all the rest of their games just to make playoffs.
So I'm curious, Grant, one of the glaring weaknesses to me that I see not just this past Monday, but every single week is the offensive line. I know you're a big fan of Mike McGlinchey, but what did you see from the line this week? And at this point in the season, do you think the Niners need to be making changes?
It's soft. There's no other way to put it. From the right tackle to the right guard to the center to the left guard, it's soft. They can't pick up a yard when they do a quarterback sneak. Mike McGlinchey, I don't know what his deal is. He was decent the last couple of years. Now he just flops around the field like a fish on a boat. I mean, really. They should move him to guard or left bench. One of those two. Playing him at right tackle is just going to get quarterbacks hurt.
Right. All right, now, in this season of COVID, everything has been weird, but it's been the weirdest for the 49ers. It's really unfortunate, actually. I don't want to say I feel bad for them. That's not the correct term, I'd say, because they're still playing football and there's people going through it way worse during this pandemic. But they've essentially been shunned from their home county, and now they're playing in Arizona. What's the pulse of the team right now? I know you're tapped in more than us. Do you think it's affecting them, or do you think they've been professional about how is just their own personal bubble affecting them, their mental, their play, and all of that?
How could it not affect them? Really, I mean, it's really uncomfortable. You're away from your home, and you're not a good team. You're 5-7. You just lost. If they beat Washington this upcoming weekend, they can rally and they can play well. But just imagine if they lose to Washington, then they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Imagine how awful it would be to stay in Arizona after losing to Washington. So they're at a very crucial point. If they lose this coming weekend, they might lose the rest of their games. It could become very bleak.
You kind of led into our next question, Grant, but how do you see the rest of the season playing out for the 49ers, and what do you think their chances are at this point of making the playoffs?
The chances aren't good, but I still think they can make it. I think this upcoming game against Washington is their toughest game. They're going against a defense that just made Ben Roethlisberger look like a chump. What are they going to do to Nick Mullins? That being said, Washington doesn't score very much. Alex Smith's a very methodical quarterback. He wants to score about 21 points and win the time of possession. The Niners could beat Washington. Then if they beat Washington, Dallas stinks. Arizona's lost 4 out of 5, just like the Niners. And Seattle has lost 3 out of 5. And they just lost to the Giants when they're with their backup quarterback, a team that the Niners beat. So it's possible, but they got to win this one against Washington. It's the toughest game left.
Grant, you know, you mentioned Alex Smith, and I know, you know, if that game was at Levi's and we weren't playing in a pandemic, he would get a nice ovation. You know, he still has a lot of fans here in the Bay Area. You covered him when he was the starting quarterback from the Niners. What do you remember from covering him? Why does this fan base respect him so much?
It's funny because the fan base couldn't stand him when I covered him when he was on the team. He was always a disappointment. He wasn't aggressive enough. I think kind of the way Bears fans feel about Mitchell Trubisky. Trubisky's way worse, but it's that you're not Patrick Mahomes. You're not Deshaun Watson, and we hate you for that. And Niner fans basically felt that way about Alex Smith. You're not Aaron Rodgers. We could have had Aaron Rodgers. We can't stand the look of your face. So when Colin Kaepernick took his job, I think a lot of Niner fans were like, good, see ya. And when he got traded, it was like, hey, man, good luck. But he had a great second act to his career in Kansas City, a great third act to his career in Washington. And what a revenge story if he could knock the Niners out of the playoffs.
Yeah, would be wild.
Yes, and really an incredible comeback story in general from Alex Smith. How do you see this matchup against Washington playing out, Grant, on paper at least?
Okay, so they just made Ben Roethlisberger look awful. I don't think you can't expect the Niners offense to look good. This defensive line of Washington is what the Niners defensive line last year was like. It's overwhelming. So Mullen's going to have his hands full. I don't think the Niners are going to score 20 points, but I don't think the Washington football team, if that's what they're called, is going to score 20 points either. I think the Niners defense is going to bounce back majorly. They're not facing Josh Allen anymore. Josh Allen looked like a combination of John Elway and Superman in that game. Alex Smith is a nice quarterback. He's a modest quarterback. I think the Niners are going to do to him what they did to Jared Goff and win.
Nice. And then one quick hitter before we let you go, Grant. We have to have our Jimmy G update. Should we expect to see him again this season? And while you're at it, what about George Kittle? They kept showing shots of them up in that press box last week in Arizona, kind of just hanging tight. Can we see them suited up again this year?
I'm just guessing, but tell me if you disagree. If the Niners get eliminated from the playoffs this coming weekend, you think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to want to come back and play 2 more games with this team, or George Kittle? I mean, we're talking that the Niners might cut Jimmy Garoppolo or trade Jimmy Garoppolo. You think he wants to come and play a couple of football games once they're already eliminated and risk getting injured? I don't see it, Jason. I think if the Niners can stay in the hunt and Jimmy can come back at the 11th hour and be the hero, hey, I'd like to do that too. But if they're out of it, I don't want to take those hits. That's the way I look at Jimmy's mindset, and probably George Kittle too.
Yeah, you have a point, and especially more so for George Kittle because he's the future. What's the point? I could see the 49ers trying to maybe sell Jimmy Garoppolo. Hey, this guy can play, trade bait, but we'll have to wait and see. Grant,
Jimmy's going to have to sign off on that, right? He'd be like, you know what, guys, my ankle hurts. Sorry, Good luck.
All righty. That's Grant Cohn. Those are our keys to the game.